Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. Welcome to our webinar for the day, hosted by the Online Ethics Center, Project Management Institute, and Ethics and Leadership Association on the topic of ethical principles in the built environment. The Online Ethics Center has been in existence for 35 years, and it has been funded by various entities such as the National Science Foundation, National Academy of Engineering, and the Center for Engineering Ethics and Society. It's currently hosted by the University of Virginia. The Ethics Center itself seeks to provide resources, education, and events to assist practitioners and students in understanding ethically significant issues. The OEC has different areas of focus, and a brand new one was created this year, and that is the Built Environment Network.
Hi, thank you all for joining the webinar today. I represent the Project Management Institute. PMI is the leading authority in project management and dedicated to providing frameworks and certification for project managers globally. PMI has been in the industry for over 50 years. Most of you will know us through our popular certification, the PMP, which is the Project Management Professional Certification, seen as the gold standard for project management across the world. However, in the past 5 years, we started on a journey to develop for the first time a certification that looks at the built environment industry. And that certification, that new certification, is what we call the PMI Construction Professional. And this bodes well with the topic of today, trying to upskill professionals on the best and ethical way to run projects within the built environment industry. So thank you all for joining.
Yeah, and so I'm Olivier Lazare. Thanks everyone for joining us. Representing today the Ethics and Leadership Association, ELA. So not as old as PMI, we just opened a couple of months ago. The aim of that professional association, founded by myself and a few of my colleagues, is to provide a framework, a practical, operational framework around ethical leadership, which is something which is much needed these days, especially with the increase and raising of technology across our organizations. So we provide membership, we provide a practice guide, newly published certification program, and different resources. And this webinar is actually our very first one. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Let's go ahead and introduce today's panelists, starting with you, Raphael.
Sorry, I think I was my mute button was going on and off there. My name is Raphael Ani. I am the as I mentioned, I am the person that runs the built environment business at PMI. The official title is Head of Growth and Construction Markets in PMI. And what that entails is actually working with organizations across the world on the standards they use for delivering projects across the world. And secondly, and how they upskill professionals within the built environment space. Thank you so much.
Olivier.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm Olivier Lazare. I'm the chair and CEO of the Ethics and Leadership Association, and I'm very happy to collaborate also time to time with the OEC, especially in setting up this event. I have been working in project and program management for the past 25 years or so at different capacities. I have led teams in different industries. I've been at PMI a colleague of Rafael for 5 years. And now, yeah, developing this ELA adventure, which is very interesting and challenging, and we're seeing a lot of very good and very positive feedback.
John Michael.
Thanks, Lexia. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Michael Lemon. I'm the Director of Civil Engineering and a Principal at Osborne Engineering in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been in Cleveland for the past 12 years. Originally grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. Understanding there is certainly a University of Virginia contingent. I am a Hokie, but I very much do enjoy partnering with the fellow institutions within the Commonwealth, and look forward to speaking with you from my experience as a designer and a project manager in the discussion today.
And I'm Alexia Nalowick. I am a professor, practitioner, researcher, and author with about 30 years of experience in construction, specifically with a focus on cost management. So today's topic addresses a question of, let's see, one second. How ethical principles shape business decisions in the built environment. And we're going to kick this off with a question for the full panel, which is when we talk about ethics in the built environment, what scope are we really talking about? Is it compliance, sustainability, long-term value, stakeholders, or is it something broader? And I'll leave it to the panel to discuss.
I'm happy to jump in first. I'll say from my position as an engineer, I take great pride in having the opportunity to both help create and transform communities. In doing that, whether a project is public or private, my team have the opportunity and frankly the responsibility to maximize the efficiency of those uses while implementing it in a sustainable manner that'll be able to be enjoyed well into the future. One local example that works that I think fits here, the city of Cleveland has instituted a Complete and Green Streets program. It's a way to implement a combination of benefits, one being a road diet or a reduction of the overall pavement, incorporating multi-use paths and trails, and green infrastructure to help with localized drainage, along with the planting of new trees. This combination reduces the neighborhood heat island effect. It encourages more healthy walking and biking behaviors, and it helps to create an overall sense of place.
And I can jump in on that scope and say, really, when we talk about the built environment, we're talking about the full life cycle of a capital project. Everything from strategic selection of projects to project planning, which is urban planning, design, which is architecture and engineering, construction, and all the that are involved therein. So each one of those aspects has each one of those areas has very unique ethical aspects. Everything from project selection to whether or not you have stakeholder inclusivity, quality of life, to fraud, lack of transparency, and even human trafficking. So built environment has no shortage of ethical implications.
Sorry,
And I'll follow what Dr. Alexia has just said, because in my opinion, those initial steps that we have in the built environment, as you alluded to and you pointed out, have ethical issues embedded in them. But in my opinion, from a project management point of view, what is really very important is how do we embed it and not treat it as a leftover, as a nice to have. It's how do we make it integral to the delivery of the project. And in some instances, you look at how do you bring it when we look at the way we run projects today, we have stage gates for cost, budget, quality. Should we have a stage gate for ethics? Do you
Yeah,
understand?
it's
Should that be
it's a very
something?
good point. It's a very good
Exactly.
point,
Should that
Ralph.
be something that we put in a document, and the same way we sign off on ensuring and reporting on quality and cost? Should we start signing off on the on ethics? So these are some of the things that I can think of from what Dr. Alexia said, and I don't know what you think of.
I like that one, Rafi, and I'm currently drafting the second edition of my book on performance audit. So I think I'm going to add that ethics question into every single project phase.
Yeah, one thing when we're compiling our ethical leadership practice guide was actually to make sure that it's not about compliance, that it's not just a checklist that people can just put a cross in it and move forward. It's actually an integration process. And yesterday I was in New York at the United Nations at the STI Science Technology and Innovation conference, and they were discussing a lot about SDG 11, and actually the way of integrating ethics into that is an integration process. It spans over everything, and it connects to sustainability in the sense that it creates the ability to integrate sustainability from an ESG perspective, E being the environment, how we use these resources ethically, responsibly. The S, how we treat people, how we integrate our stakeholders. And the G in terms of governance, how we set up what Raf was just talking about in terms of the proper governance system around that. So it's an overarching principle, I think.
And I'll even push a bit more on what you said, Olivier, because that one other thing when you capture it from that integrated point of view is that reporting it and how it drives profitability might be some way to influence behavior.
Yes.
Because we all know that when we are ethical, we apply things the right way, and they are pure ROI. There is a pure metric that we can actually capture those ROI and investment. That, in my opinion, actually makes a strong case for ethics from a professional point of view and from an upskilling point of view. And I think that is something that, and what you're doing now as one of the leaders that worked in PMI, this research becomes even more important for the industry, not just in the built environment, but how do we extrapolate that to other sectors? But we can start it from the built environment.
And that leads us to the next, particularly to Alexia here. From the perspective of the OEC, what are the most important ethical questions that professionals in the built environment are still not asking often enough?
I think, as we know, capital projects keep just getting bigger. We now have not just mega projects, but giga projects. And I myself am currently working on a project that's currently valued at $250 billion. The OEC seeks not just to support practitioners, but also to prepare the next generation for these major projects that are coming through the pipeline. And what I think we need to address is really what gets at the root of ethical challenges in the built environment. So what I've found is that part of the ethics problem occurs with conflicting loyalties. When you have obligations to your own company that you're working for, you have obligations to the client and also to the stakeholder, that leads to conflicting responsibilities, and eventually one wins out. You also have, nobody's exempt from this. Everybody has their own personal aspirations. and that means their own pursuit of success. And we have challenges with lack of enforcement, where I think partly due to fear of litigation, enforcement of ethical challenges requires a rather strict burden of proof. So professional associations and companies are very often not willing to pursue the repercussions for ethical misbehavior. But I think one thing that we wrestle with on probably a daily basis in academia is the development of moral character and when that occurs. When do you develop self-reflection, transparency, accountability, sort of being a good person? When does all this occur? And to that end, we're all sort of looking at philosophic study and psychology, trying to figure out when that occurs and how early we should start to introduce ethics education and the concepts and socialization of ethical conduct.
Mm. No, and definitely, I would be careful about saying that being ethical and being a good person is exactly the same thing. It depends basically on the decision you make and how you make those decisions. At ELA, we came up with something which we call the integrity model, where each time you have to make a decision, you look at, can I do it? Do I have the capability, basically the resources to do what I'm about to decide to do? Which is contextual. Then, is it legal? Do I have the right to do that? And the legal system is something very strict. It's a set of regulations and laws that are enforced at the level of a society. Then it's not because you can and it's not illegal that you should do it. And this is where ethics comes into the picture. A code of ethics is something that is agreed upon and you choose to adhere it because of the profession, because of the group you belong to. There is a code of ethics for many professions. PMI has a code of ethics for project managers. There's a code of ethics for doctors. There's a code of ethics for lawyers. No, maybe not lawyers, but it's sorry for lawyers. Love them too. It's really about what should I do even if I'm not prevented to do it. And even though there is a higher level of that, which are or personal value or beliefs as a person, as an individual. And from that, if you check all of the boxes, you make a decision in integrity. But of course, no one ever checks all of the boxes, so you have to make compromise.
Yeah.
And where do you make these compromises? You can make them at different levels, but one where you shouldn't definitely make them is this one, your own personal values here.
Right. On to the next question, and this one's primarily for John Michael. In the waterfront redevelopment and urban infrastructure projects, where do you see ethical tensions showing up most clearly between economic development, public interest, and long-term community impacts?
Thank you. I'll focus that to Cleveland, where I'm most experienced on these, but especially in Cleveland, we're blessed with waterfronts along both the Cuyahoga River and Lake Erie. Historically, those have been heavily industrial uses that have been sort of the back of house, if you will, from a community activation perspective. And there really hasn't been public access to get to the water, to be able to experience and people are naturally drawn to the water. And there's been that bifurcation just based on a lot of our history. So one of the main elements with economic development and how that comes into play is if each individual public, private, or even a PPP were to have only their own goals focused, there's continued opportunities that are missed out. What we've been fortunate with our current Mayor Bibb's approach, which is a shore to core to shore, being the intersections between the river, downtown and the lake, really to look to maximize opportunities for development of all scales. Sure, larger development can be primary drivers in those as they develop new magnets and new anchors that will continue to foster additional goals. But to really be able to take pride in the transformation of the entire city allows for each of those developments to support one another, and through we'll say dollars coming in from outside entities and internal entities to really be blended as opposed to being in direct competition. One thing along our waterfront, especially, whether it be a hillside stabilization project at Irishtown Bend, which will ultimately save and protect the shipping channel, which is vital to our community. The Cleveland Metro Parks is building a new park on that area after the fact to encourage people to come to the water. We have a riverfront development, which is taking 35 acres of back of house parking lots and turning it into a mixed use redevelopment with over 12 acres of dedicated public land. Again, same type of use, they're just down the river from one another. And so once one is able to gain momentum, it continues to be contagious. And that has been a positive nature, seeing public land with private development, private land with private development with public supported funds. It really allows that true community to come together in the built environment to allow for, at the end of the day, our residents, our visitors, our guests to all be able to enjoy the next transformation while still not doing it at the expense of the long-term residents that have been in the area, where it's still active and inviting and welcoming instead of just being, turning a page to a new day.
So you really focused on all your stakeholders and the impact to those.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think as an engineer, I think, Olivier mentioned it earlier, we have clients, we have stakeholders, we have municipalities, we have a number of different folks that we need to understand what our requirements are. We also need to understand what's the right way of doing things. And sometimes it can be a challenge, because sometimes we'll work with an out-of-town developer who their main priority is their project, where everyone else around there, every other municipality or other stakeholder, we are working with on a daily basis across. So to be that surge protector in some ways of understanding the right way that things have to be done, and to be able to interject yourself confidently to be able to see those through.
Okay, thank you. On to our next question for Raphael. From a project management standpoint, how can ethics be incorporated into decision-making early instead of treating it as a checkbox?
Now, thank you so much for that question, and that touches on what we have been discussing till now. In my opinion, the way I would like to answer that is actually try to see it from the ethical nuance required to deliver projects and how it actually drives value. Costs and quality and everything is something that we plan early doors. If we are talking about ethics at a later stage of the project, it means that the governance framework of that project did not even take that into consideration at early doors, which is a big problem. So the way I think it should become integral is actually showing that ethics drives value. The more we can show that it's not a nice to have, but an integral driver of value, the more people will be keen to integrate it as early as possible. And that also touches on the outcome we're trying to drive, because ethics at the core of it is it's closely aligned to the outcome we're trying to drive from a project. So if we are very clear on what outcomes we're trying to drive and what impact we're trying to drive. You just mentioned you're working on a $200+ billion project, which there are specific outcomes you're trying to drive with that. From that impact, you can at least see, you can deduce what are the ethics required to hit that particular goal and bring it early doors, even at the conceptual stage of the project, because that can then drive all the activities that need to happen downstream. But that ability to articulate the outcome you want properly is something I think that we should, because then, as I mentioned earlier, you can then, because once you have that clarity, it's almost like working backward from the end goal, and then you can at each phase input how to enforce that behavior that drives that outcome with the associated ethics. That is the way I think that we make ethics a front end topic and one that actually drives value with clear ROI and enforce the right behavior across the life cycle of the project.
Thank you very much. Olivier, I know you have a theory about the connection between sustainability and trust as a new business currency. So how does trust influence decision-making in the built environment, especially when projects have these generational effects on communities?
Yeah, so I think it's coming from a number of my talks. I often talk about trust as being the new currency of business. It's based from a very interesting study conducted by Edelman, which showed that for the same product, the same service, people are keen to pay twice as much if it comes from a company or an organization they trust. 39% of the people who have been watched in the study, 39% of those people are keen to pay twice as much for the same product or service if it comes from a company they trust. Speaking of a business case, that's super important. We want to make sure that the way or we invest our time, we invest our money, that this is generating something more than just the product and the service for some kind of mercantile objective. And this is also something which we see more and more in the way people select their employment. I mean, number one thing when you receive an employment offer, you go on Glassdoor, you check the company and see what's going on behind the curtains. And so trust is really something important. Trust is something that helps you positioning yourself on a given market, and trust is something that helps you also gathering the right resources to build what your mission is about. And when we talk about built environment, we impact entire communities. We impact entire communities in the way these people will be living for the next 50 or even 100 years. We impact the way energy will be consumed there. At this United Nations conference yesterday, they made a lot of connections between sustainable cities, but also how energy is used and produced, how this new land you're building on, how is it depolluted before putting people there. Many years ago, I worked with a company who was doing exactly that, depolluting all industrial sites to make them suitable for building actually. And that was a very costly endeavor, sometimes even more costly than building itself. They're digging like 10 feet, easy 10 to 20 feet deep, sometimes burning the land and putting all of that to evacuate all of the pollution which was in the soil. And this is very true in developing countries and everything. And companies who are building all of this, they have to demonstrate that we can, as citizens, we can actually trust them in the way they approach this, in the way they will shape our lives for the next 50 to 100 years and the lives of our children and everything. So yeah, it's a very important currency. If you don't create that trust, you can't do anything. And which leads us to actually your point of view, Alexia, on that, how leaders should approach this cost-benefit analysis when short-term financial logic point one way, but the long-term environmental and social consequences point in another one, as a follow-up of that.
So if you look at the equations for cost benefit analysis, the practice is to take various values, estimates of cost or proxies for the value of various elements, and then consider also the amount of time that you're studying for the project and the rate of interest that's applied. If you look at that equation, every single one of those variables is an ethical decision, especially when you're looking at an environmental point of view. Because if you're looking at benefits that are going to take decades to come to fruition, once you apply that interest rate, you have immediately reduced the present value of those benefits to near zero, and they become non-material in the calculation. So this is really an interdisciplinary challenge. If you look at, I think there was a study of some 15 years of US EPA cost benefit analyses, and they found that due to the problems of the present value calculation and also a lack of proxy values for certain benefits. In other words, the ability to translate qualitative benefits into a dollar value. 80% of cost benefit analyses that were conducted by the US EPA were actually excluding key benefits, and as a result, the decisions made did not address the actual objectives of the projects that were selected. We're part of the solution to this is a blend of both quantitative and qualitative approaches and applying multi-criteria decision making, but also thinking about the ethics of what is included in those calculations and those strategic decisions.
Yeah. And putting that with the long-term value.
I will actually even add more to that and just second what Alexia said, because absolutely you're spot on about that calculation explanation. But one of because of this particular reason, that's why PMI in our own view to projects will look at projects more from a project success point of view, because that's a more holistic way of looking at it. And it's a project is successful once the value or the impact created is greater or higher than the input, which are the variables you're talking about, because those inputs at the time you run the project are very short-term focused, but when you look at a very good example is the Sydney Opera House, which was over budget and right?
A really famous example.
Exactly. Would you say it was successful? Was it a good thing? Imagine the ethical challenges for the project manager at the point when he knew, when he or she knew that things were going to go over budget, over time. If they tried to cut corners and build something that was not ethically proper, that would have, been catastrophic. But today, thousands of millions of people travel to Sydney to see that building, and and many other huge infrastructure projects. So I could not agree more with yourself. That holistic view is what I think that the industry should be taking, while still not taking their eyes away on the end value calculation and all the very here and now calculation, but always have that long-term view to project delivery. I think is the right approach.
Right. So what you're looking at is outcomes and benefits management instead of the usual three pillars of cost, schedule, and quality.
Absolutely, and history has shown us that focusing on those three have actually not been able to deliver projects on time and budget. Because if you look at our metrics as an industry, McKinsey report that I looked at said that nine out of every 10 projects end up either over budget or over cost or over budget or over time and some scope creep. So
I would challenge that, but okay.
Exactly. So, but the triple constraint we've seen is important, but the outcome is as important, which is what
Even
I'm trying
more.
to say. Yeah.
Even more. And this morning I have been dragged into a discussion about the differences between projects and programs, and some people were saying, "Oh, program is just a fancy word for a big project." No, actually, it's not. A project is something that delivers an outcome, and you measure the success of this outcome, of this deliverable, in on some certain criteria, time, cost, quality, and so on. But the program and in built environment, we definitely, what our main business is doing programs, not projects. And the success of a program is not the same as the success of the project. You can have a very unsuccessful project. You mentioned the Sydney Opera House, but there are tons of other examples which are total failure on a project from a project management perspective, but are huge successes in terms of program or even portfolio management perspective, or vice versa. You can have in aerospace, I mean, I often use the example of the Concorde, which was in project success on all aspects. Total, absolute failure from a program management perspective and from a portfolio management perspective, but delivered on time, below budget, quality, amazing, the best plane ever, the most good-looking plane ever. They plan to sell 250 of those. They sold 16 of those. I mean, these are two different animals. And yeah, in built environment, we definitely look at that long-term, very long-term, sometimes multi-generational aspect. And to look at this from a stakeholder perspective, in projects involving here both private development and public partnerships as you're working on, how do you make sure the public engagement is meaningful and not just a checkbox?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm actually going to touch on a point Raphael made a little bit earlier, that ethics is something that you need to wear on your sleeve. It's something that needs to be one of the forefront of the way that you present yourself in decisions, not just something that you do as an audit at the end. Yeah, that seemed ethical, right? That it needs to do that. And I think that really again weighs into this first piece, because it's kind of two different answers traditionally between private development and public engage and public-private partnerships, because of that layer of public and some additional oversight and requirements that may come along with some of the commitments. However, what I've found and what I see is in a lot of private developments, really the detailed stages of of early planning needs to be public outreach. Whether it's a requirement or not, it's part of a due diligence phase that really allows you to understand your surroundings. It helps you to understand what your project, right, is, how it can fit into in that one example, the program of the neighborhood or area that it's going to become a critical member of that fabric. So while while the specific approaches to outreach and engagement can vary, really the more engaged early on, the genuine benefit that can be brought to the surrounding communities, to other stakeholders. Touching a little bit on our past topic, right? If when you look at long-term dollars, but with short-term focus, you're going to miss the forest from the trees, because when you look at those number of parts, you can find other collaborators that have funding opportunities if you see them early enough, if you reach out to them early enough, and then that can actually allow your project to be more successful than you even necessarily thought had you not openly engaged folks ahead of time. On the public side, I think while it tends to be more of a structured and required program in terms of items that we need to check off along the way, people that go through that as a step one, meet with this group, step two, meet with that group, it loses its intentionality, it loses its potential. And so to make that meaningful, I've seen a couple great examples where folks will, public outreach is important, to go to the local communities, to go to the local stakeholders, and to be candid. What can we do as part of our project to help be part of this area, rather than just absolutely erase the layers of history that have been embedded in a community because we're giving you something nice and shiny, right? So being able to genuinely be a part of that, I think whether it be public, whether it be private, is just really, it's a practice of good business, but it genuinely allows that whatever it is that's going to be constructed will have a higher degree of success because it's going to be embraced wherever it happens to reside.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally aligned. Now, we need to push this needle of ethical leadership. So, Alexia, how can ethics education, more specifically, help future engineers, architects, planners, developers to better handle the situations where there is no perfect answer, only trade-offs, compromises?
And that's really quite the struggle. What I see in academia and also in professional societies, education is really a heavy emphasis on case studies and role play. But I think what's also needed is an understanding, helping people understand the or develop situational awareness and understand the politics of situations, recognizing that they need to identify allies because ethics is difficult to do alone. I haven't seen very many scripts for ethical responses or how to address situations, possibly because in built environment there's so very many possibilities, but scripts are also one potential solution. I think ultimately, I'm I'm guided by code professional society codes of ethics, and as we all know, once you get to a certain point in your career, no one professional society can serve all your needs, right?
True.
So even though I am at heart in project management or in practice in project management and cost engineering, at heart, I go back to the American Society of Civil Engineers Code of Ethics because they state in the Code of Ethics that even the Code of Ethics has, dozens of different tenets, but they say there is no priority of responsibilities with the exception of 1A. And 1A states that engineers must first and foremost protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Mm. Yeah, do no harm and put people first. This as a basic principle, I think that everything we do, everything is done by people, for people, with people. And the moment we forget that, we're doomed. There is no like higher authority who makes a decision at the top of a skyscraper. It's people who make these decisions, and these decisions will be delivered by people and received, and these deliverables will be received and used by people. And the people component, as you mentioned, I think is really, really, really
A-
key.
And
Very
when you say there's really no higher power, that's very, very true. In a professional society, in employment with a client organization, if ethics is being ignored at the very
yeah,
top, there's often nobody else you can
yeah,
go to.
yeah. The fish rots by the head, as we say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's super,
So,
super.
Raphael, if sustainability is both a business opportunity and a competitive advantage, how can organizations pursue that opportunity in an ethical manner without it being just a branding or a marketing technique?
Thank you so much, Alexia, for that question. It's one that is pertinent and very, very frontal in today's world because it's something that has been now made into a woke or dirty word, the word sustainability. Because rightly or wrongly, some people have tried to take advantage of it and used it in the wrong way. And we have what we used to call in my previous slide the photo KPIs. It's become like a nice marketing tool. The way I see it becoming more of a business driver is some organizations are now using different contracting methods to make it core to delivery. When you bring it in such a way that it's now contractually an obligation for sustainability and ethics to be adhered to at the highest standards, then organizations are most times, aligned to do it and see the value that it drives. And a very simple example is if you look at the kind of contracting methods that we use in the industry traditionally, it's design, build, design, bid, build, with the payment terms of either time and material or cost plus. Those things lend themselves very much to be abused and not to be sustainable. But we now hear of new contractors, the collaborative contracting strategy, which is now something new that a lot more people are now trialing in the industry. And that has seemed to be working magic or wonders, especially when you want things like sustainability and ethics to be very, very important and to be driven through the value chain and to drive real strength. And a very simple example is Heathrow Terminal 5. I'm in the UK. What happened at that project was initially when they started, I think it was a design build bid contract that they had to cut it because everything was running over time and late and everything. And they decided to use a collaborative contracting strategy approach where it's open book, everybody's transparent, sustainability is at the core of the contracting. You take care of ethics is very important. You take care of both the contractor and the client. There's that openness. People, even the professionals working on the projects, are taken care of. Health and safety, as you mentioned, becomes core. When there's an issue, nobody wants to hide it under the table. It's open. People can discuss it. We come up with a solution. At the core of it is that the risk is shared and it's not being outsourced or layered on either on the client or on the contractor. That project ended up completing ahead of time and below budget. This was something that started as a disaster. So those contracting strategies are things that we've seen that organizations are now taking serious and using it as a tool to bring in sustainability and ethics as core to driving value. Because when you And that project actually proved that when you do things right, you just don't make better margins. You also leave a very happy client who will actually want to work with you in future. And the employees that work with you are very proud of what they did. And, it's a win-win situation for everybody. But it's actually changing some of our behaviors a little bit and making people quite comfortable with this new approach and showing them how it actually helps everybody. So that, in my opinion, is a way I think that organizations can actually start taking this topic of sustainability and ethics more seriously and driving real business change in the organizations. Yeah.
And to be clear, when we're talking about when you're talking about sustainability, you're talking not just about environmental effects, but you're also
No,
talking about the full United Nations
exactly.
17 sustainability goals, which include social, economic, and environmental sustainability, such as health, education, gender equality, and more.
Absolutely. And such a collaborative contract drives all that naturally
Mhm.
because you're making the right decisions without needing to compromise. But if you look at the traditional methods that we use, they're not really primed for that ethical behavior. There's a lot of hide and seek, I like to call it. And that behavior is the fundamental thing that we can actually shift with the right contract embedded in them as you said, the whole United Nations sustainability
Mhm.
goals and the ethics that follow through with it.
So you mentioned decision making. If we're looking at decision making in the built environment, and you want to create a true governance framework for ethical and sustainable decision making, what elements need to be in place?
In my opinion, I think that the leadership, the actual the stake the stakeholders and the leadership of the project have to be very clear that on what they want to achieve. That for me is the fundamental thing, and that openness, especially in built environment where most of the things that we do is the first time that we're doing it. That openness to know that this is the first time this is going to be addressed, and this collectively this is what we want to achieve. That openness needs to be there, and that openness comes in the form of governance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Olivier,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
No, agree. I mean, the way we make decisions is a conscious decision in itself. And what needs to be in place? Uh, Tools. We need to equip leaders. We need to equip people with the ability to actually look at their decisions from the lens of ethical principles, sustainable principles. And when I talk about sustainability, that's why I don't like so much talking about sustainability because it has a kind of greenish vibe. I'm talking from a business perspective, ESG, environmental resources, social, people, and governance as a framework. And it's a business thing. It's also something which is related to organizational resilience. If you want your organization to be resilient, you need to be equipped in making properly these decisions, in treating properly the people to actually just be more productive and more effective and more efficient. It's as simple as that. Being ethical is not about gathering everyone around the fire pit and singing kumbaya. No, it's about making the right and good business decisions around that. So, and that's the entire purpose behind, I think, the establishment of the Online Ethics Center, of the establishment of the Ethics and Leadership Association. We want to equip people with these tools. We want to raise the awareness, give them the education behind that, and give them also the ability to demonstrate that this is actually how they are capable of driving their business towards success. Um,
Okay.
Otherwise,
I'm
it's a short-term view.
I'm trying to be mindful of our remaining time, and we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our last question, which is to all the panelists. If you can leave the audience with one practical principle or thought exercise for making better ethical decisions in the built environment, what would that be? And I'd say let's take that in alphabetical order by last name. That's you, Raphael.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Sorry. I'm trying to take my
Where's
mute.
involved?
I'm trying to take the mute off. Sorry. Now, in my opinion, what I will say is that the practical thing I will leave people with is it's this is an old topic, but a new topic. It's an old topic because it's something that has always been there, but a new topic because there have been new methodologies that have actually been incorporated. So the practical thing I would say is actually open a book and start to read more about integrated contracting and the new delivery model that it actually enhances. That is one very practical guide I'll give to people. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivier.
I think I would say in terms of systems. Everything is interrelated. Everything is interconnected. One decision made here will have an impact here, and so you have to look at the overall system. What we were discussing about the approach of program management, which is more applicable to the built environment than anywhere else, is about this. And as you can look at the consequences of your decisions, you will have a tendency to make maybe more ethical ones.
All right. John Michael.
One thing that I've always looked at is from a moral compass perspective. I always like to think when I learn about a new project or an opportunity is at the end of the day, is it something that I'm going to be proud to either take my family to or to have my family be a part of, right? That's something that really allows it to be tangible. I would say, while it certainly lost its charm on my wife, I absolutely love it when we're driving down the street and one of my sons says, "Hey, Dad, isn't that a project you worked on?" Right? That's something that's special to me. It's a connection. So I think whether it's when I first got into this industry or where I am now 25 years later, I'm still as energized to be a part of a transformation or a general benefit, and to do it in a way that doesn't just look great on opening day, but that becomes a destination, it becomes a betterment, is something that just really is important to me.
Yeah, that's really, that makes things really meaningful in your life. What is the legacy that you've created by working in the built environment, right? So I would end on on really something to think about, and that is that sometimes when making ethical decisions, it could come down to making a personal sacrifice. So standing up for what's right could end with you leaving a project or losing your job if you really stick to it. So I would encourage people to think about both the fortitude and the level of privilege that is necessary for people to make ethical decisions and to think about what that means for them, but also how they can help others make ethical decisions when they're faced with difficult choices of that sort.
Yeah.
Olivier, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I would add just one thing to that. If you're questioning, is there really a problem there? If you just have to ask the question, if there's really a problem there, guess what? There is a problem there.
Mhm.
As simple as that.
Yeah. I notice we have a number of international attendees on this. I would like to thank them for either staying up very late or getting up very early to attend this. And Olivier, over to you.
No, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alexia, for setting this up. Thank you, Raphael, for joining. Thank you, John Michael, for your practical, tangible contribution
And
into
UVA and the OEC for hosting. Absolutely.
yes, and definitely the UVA and NOEC for welcoming us and allowing us to do that. It's a very important discussion. There certainly will be a lot of follow-ups around this. So looking forward to these follow-ups.
And I think all of us are very accessible and very findable on social media and via the web. So if people have questions, please feel free to reach out to us or to any of the 3 organizations that have hosted. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.